it's also baking a nutritious bread without an oven.
It's spring in Montana, and we have a great old-fashioned recipe for you.
Do you remember, or did your mother or your grandmother make Boston brown bread? Make hearty bread without an oven.
Without an oven, and that's what we're gonna make
We're
today.
gonna make today on the top of the wood stove.
Yes, the wood-burning stove.
Put this in.
That's right, no oven. We're going to use the top of the cook stove and boil this batter for 3.5 hours. Okay. In old tin cans. If we're lucky and we keep a close eye on the stove, my good friend Susan and I will have a spectacular old-fashioned bread for us to savor by lunchtime. And in all that waiting, we have some repairs to do. Susan grew up as a little girl cooking with her mother on a wood-burning cook stove, just like the one we have here in the homestead cabin today. Flowers.
Okay.
Do you remember this bread? Known to many as Boston brown bread. For some, it was a Christmas tradition, full of dried fruit and molasses. It's a flavor of past times. And on this cool morning in spring, we're going to try our hand at it, and then let the next generation try it and see if it still holds its charm.
I'll try that. Yeah, you want a really firm experience. You need to heavily grease these cans. Just use your fingers, dear. If you don't, you're sorry. In the day, they had what they call pudding cans. We don't have pudding cans. We have tomato cans.
What is a pudding can?
It has I guess it has a lid that screws on, and you cooked your pudding in it.
Really?
Your Christmas puddings? It works perfectly.
Greasing those tin cans and keeping the fire going are our first priorities. On a windy day in a drafty old cabin, it's a good idea to get a basin of hot washing water going too. Yeah. For hands, for dishes, and for dogs looking for a warm treat. Finn, that's hot.
He doesn't seem to mind.
Pretty hot. With the first layer of work done, it's on to the fun part, the mixing of the batter from a recipe found in a treasured old cookbook.
Pudding. Pudding and pie. She's got it marked. So we have two recipes that are very close. We have the recipe from the original Boston Cooking School for brown bread. They call it Boston brown bread. And then we have a recipe in my mother's Joy of Cooking, and the two recipes are identical, except Joy of Cooking includes the raisins.
The recipe starts with 3 kinds of flour, and none of them are our standard white, refined stuff that we find in grocery stores today. So we have rye, graham, and cornmeal flour.
Okay, so this is the corn I ground for the bread. It's an Abenaki Indian corn that was saved from the northeast coast. Somebody saved the seed. The corn comes in yellow and red ears. But in my garden, I planted it too close to the purple corn. They cross-pollinated, but I don't care. But I think it's kind of cute. This is the cornmeal. I ground it this morning out of this corn. A cup of graham flour ground this morning, and a cup of rye, and a cup of cornmeal, which isn't yellow because I used colored corn. Whoops, there's a whole corn. Whoops, a toothbreaker. So we'll put those in. 3/4 of a teaspoon of soda. Something like that. I don't know. We need a little salt.
Oh, I've got the salt.
And then I'm just going to really blend these flours. And in Montana, if a person had access to molasses, it probably came up the Missouri River until the train came in, and then maybe it would have come north from Louisiana. Food historians would know more, but I do know that my grandmother lived on a farm in Kansas. She used, instead of molasses, she used what she called sargums. And it was sorghum syrup. And she bought it in, my dad said, something akin to a 1-gallon paint can. Anyway, I thought that was kind of, we can think about if these people made brown bread, where their ingredients would have come from. And that's something we could all think about more, about all our food, for sure. And 3/4 of a cup of molasses, which we're gonna call something like that. What do you think?
Perfect. Now the full recipe for this is in the description, so you can refer back to it if you decide to make this dish. And if you're enjoying this whole adventure, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment, even just a thumbs up. It helps us tremendously and it keeps our spirits going. The next wet ingredient to go in is the buttermilk. Now when this buttermilk hits the baking soda, we'll get a little bit of puff and rise in our cake.
Something like that. She's right.
Did you hear too? Viewers wrote in and they think we should call the stove Julia. Julia. That was
That's very sweet.
my great grandmother who came across in the 49ers wagon train. She was the one, she wrote a letter about all her adventures as a little girl. And so her name was Julia. We have to say good morning, Julia.
Good morning, Julia. That's good. Many homesteaders, if they were to survive, would have had a milk cow, and buttermilk was available easily. It's really a good idea to lick the spoon. Very good.
Working with old recipes is such a treat. It's not only the flavors loved by your ancestors, it's the stories and emotions tied to them.
I found her brown bread recipe in here. One of her favorites. You can see her well-loved recipes. My mother's recipe, which is in this cookbook, this was, we called it Irma. It's Irma Baumbach. We called it Irma. What does Irma say? So, a wedding gift to my mom. There's a recipe for brown bread, and which is what she made when I was a kid. And it calls for raisins. Oh. And I thought that was interesting, wondering whether in the 1880s, if raisins were available in Montana. I don't know. I think it would have been later in history that raisins became more available. But they're great in the bread, so we're adding them. I'm going to also add is dried apples. And these I know can be grown in this area because I snitched them off a neighboring house that was not occupied, and the tree was dropping apples. So I snitched them and dried them.
That's fair game.
It's fair. And so we're going to add raisins and apples to our bread today. Here's our flour blend. We're going to add dried apples, a generous amount of raisins. The beauty of brown bread is that you do not need an oven, and you get a very hearty bread. You can make it on, as we will, on a wood stove. You can make it on a campfire, and you can make it in a fireplace, and you come up with a hearty bread. And the reason it was made this way is that for the colonials, growing wheat was very difficult. I would guess because it was too wet. But they could grow rye and they could grow corn. And so they watered down the wheat with corn and rye, and just because wheat flour was more precious.
And they used to export wheat, I'm pretty sure. Wheat was a valuable export. So to eat it, you had to have enough money to afford to eat
corn. Corn, you can grow a lot of corn in a small space.
Right.
I could grow enough corn in 15-foot rows for me for a year.
So the 3 types of flour in brown bread make it very unique. But I think the most unique part when looking at this food from a modern viewpoint is that it's not baked in an oven. Today, we take ovens completely for granted, but let's jump into a wild method for bread baking that uses old tin cans. Okay, so that thick batter of molasses with the 3 flours of rye, graham, and corn is poured into the well-greased tomato cans. But the real trick is not in the boiling, but in the steaming of the bread, and that calls for a homemade lid. Now, though it's a bit makeshift with the tin foil, it will do exactly what it must to turn this batter into a special treat out here on the prairie. A bit of string cut to length, and one final touch to get it ready.
Okay, they're ready to go in, and usually what I do is take a toothpick.
Oh, I have nails. Look.
Yeah. Just gonna make a tiny hole for
Oh, clever.
steam. I don't know.
Perfect.
It's my technique.
Somewhere in there.
We're gonna just put this in. A little more of a simmer, I'm afraid.
I think this is the hottest part. It sometimes varies
It varies.
between the back too.
So,
Yeah.
just these. We may have to take some water.
This is like canning, where you have to get
Too much water? Okay. Yeah, we don't want them floating a little much. We just want the water about halfway up the cans.
Okay.
And we want the water to be at just a nice, gentle, soft simmer for 3 to 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. Woo. All right.
Okay. In she goes.
Woo.
Well, we have 3.5 hours in a lonesome cabin on the prairie. What are we gonna do? Well, the dishes, of course, and the firewood, and a bit of dusting. And then there's time for philosophizing about the world's shortcomings and its needs, and time to tuck a little one in bed for a rest. Sleep tight, baby. But there's one job, much the same as a pioneer out here would have stacked on their to-do list, and that is mending. For us, it involves one very period-correct tool that is getting its christening in the cabin today. My very own first Singer sewing machine, a 1924 treadle beauty that we've been cleaning and repairing for exactly this moment. This is its first time being used in the homestead house. Now, we have sewn on Susan's Singer Red Eye out here before, and we plan to finish the floor-length apron that we started very soon. However, today deserves a quiet pace as the brown bread steams away. So Susan has brought along a humble job that is just perfect for this blustery day.
Oh boy, I think I got it on the first try. I'm really hard on my clothes, as you can see. And if you garden with this hole in your knee, every time you kneel down, you're going to get dirt down and it runs down in your boot.
Yes.
So I patch them. It's very simple. You just take a ripper. Okay, so then you go in here. This is not fancy patching. This is just basics.
There is such a charm to an old tool like this. We put a new belt on this 100-year-old machine, took it all apart, oiled it, and did a few test spins. But a patch is a good test for this old beauty. Before real work can begin, though, my brain needs a classic British pick-me-up.
Ooh, it's strong, I think.
We'll put them in the trash.
It's not a fight. It's
Cheers.
cheers to brown bread.
To brown bread.
We had a blackberry flavoring. We always had it at our cabin, only we didn't have milk, we had cremora.
What's cremora?
Well, back in the 60s, it was a fake powdered cream, but I don't think it was like cremora that you would buy today. It was more of a real food
Really?
made out of dried milk.
Robbie's family, I think it was his dad grew up, they had milk cows. but they sold all the milk and then they would drink powdered milk because the milk was worth more.
My dad grew up with milk cows, and my grandmother put whipped cream on everything, and he could barely gag down whipped cream. Hear it? That's perfect.
Okay. So it's like a gentle...
Very gentle simmer.
The brown bread is steaming away in there. Let's go get that patch on.
Let's have one.
Now, before the sewing began, there was pinning and ironing and a few snafus along the way with not so color-fast rags.
We decided not to use that. Here we go.
But that's all in due course over 3 hours.
This isn't hot enough.
Susan is better than a second self when it comes to handling this cabin. She knows the ins and outs of a wood stove, completely trustworthy. And before we knew it, that sewing machine was whirring along.
Sews a beautiful stitch.
The bread was close to finished and the mending was done.
Okay, here we go.
Let's see it.
Oops, here's a string.
It's a perfect patch.
Bread, yes.
All right, enough fun and games. It's been 3.5 hours. Let's pull this brown bread out and taste it.
Here they come.
I have one hungry guy here who is just itching to try it.
No, you should let this completely cool till they're firm. See how soft it is? It gets very firm.
We just can't resist.
You shouldn't cut them when they're warm. See what you think.
That's good. What do you think?
Very good.
It's sweet.
You want no bite? Is it sweet?
You can see the apples and the raisins.
Beautiful. The apple's good in it.
The apple's very good.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be my lunch.
And they didn't all sink. They're nicely spread. So is this how you would eat it in round, just slices? Now, do you put butter?
I do.
Okay.
Of course I do. So the butter adds fat because there's no fat in the bread at all.
I guess, yeah, I didn't think about that.
No fat.
That's very unusual.
It is.
I mean, when you think of a cookie or a cake, let's say, it would have a lot of fat in it. I guess a true bread wouldn't have any.
This is very humble food. Very humble. I mean, it is really. This is a good lunch. You've never had brown bread.
I had never heard of this. Ever. But so you grew up with it. This was a tradition.
A lot of times my mom would make it at Christmas.
Would she use raisins and apple or just raisins?
Just raisins.
It's really good.
It is. I told you.
It's a cross between a dessert and a bread. It's not as sweet as a cake, but it's not as boring as bread.
It's really good to take like skiing. You know?
It's dark. You can smell the molasses. Would you normally eat it hot? No, cold.
And when it cools, it gets firm, very firm. So you can slice it really thin.
It's so old-fashioned.
It's very humble. I'm gonna have to cut it this way because it's.
Look inside my tail.
Oh, I found one of your corn kernels.
Oh, you did? Oh no!
Yeah.
Seriously, Uncle, you didn't break your tooth?
Yeah.
I love it.
I will try some cold, but this is pretty good warm.
I always eat it warm.
Because it's a real mixture. It's not just white flour, you know?
There's no white flour.
Yeah.
Corn, rye, and wheat. Buttermilk and fruit.
No butter, no, other than the lard we used to grease the tins. And molasses. No white sugar.
And it really is good with cream cheese.
I'll have to try that.
Mix cream cheese and honey.
We sewed, we ironed, we made a 3-hour bread and had hot Irish tea in the old homestead house today. I probably should chop some more firewood, but it's good to just relax. Thank you everyone for coming along as we made bread in a tin can, Boston brown bread, just the way Grandma would have made. I had never tried a bread like this before. It's a little bit of a mixture between a dessert and a dark bread with all sorts of different types of flour and molasses and fruit. I mean, this is as old-fashioned as it gets. And you know what? It turned out delicious. Even this guy loved it. So this is one of those forgotten foods I highly recommend, and it's one we will be making again. Maybe as Christmas gifts for everyone this year. If you want to support this channel, consider becoming a member. Members get access to all sorts of different videos, and their support keeps us going. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Tutu. Hey, Mom, look at my nose.
Ow, you took my nose! Ow!
So does that.
All right.
I'll take mine.
It's such a flavor. It's just straight out of history.